What you see here is quite possibly the most iconic lineup for a comedy festival in history, but there is a dark side to this event that cannot be ignored. Dave Chappelle, Kevin Hart, Bill Burr, Louis C.K., Tom Segura, Andrew Schultz are just a few of the over 50 comedians who hit the stage. But now many are accusing them of taking blood money from a government trying to cleanse its brutal history.
The House of Saud is paying us hundreds of thousands of dollars, some of us millions. Get over it. We're taking the money. How about that? How about that? So what? They have slaves. So what? Get over it.
The festival took place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, a country that is known for its free speech violations, restriction of the press, unfair elections, slavery, and its system of Sharia law, which represses the rights of women and other minorities within the country. If any of these laws are violated, individuals have their day in court with no implementation of case law, no standard criminal code, and are not considered innocent until proven guilty. If found guilty, they risk being put to death, even for non-violent crimes like adultery and drug smuggling. If they manage to avoid the death penalty, prisoners are still subjected to unspeakable torture and inhumane living conditions while in prison, where they are beaten and denied medical services. So countless comedians taking a massive paycheck to perform for a regime with one of the worst human rights records on earth sparked outrage across the comedy world. Some apologized, some are fighting back, and some are staying strategically silent, and today we're going to discuss them all. But one of the most surprising performers who took the Saudi money was Pete Davidson, considering his father was a firefighter who died during the 9/11 attacks on America. The Saudi government has long been accused of playing part in the tragedy for a plethora of reasons, such as 15 out of the 19 hijackers being of Saudi national origin, the Saudi Arabian government allegedly funding Al-Qaeda, as well as Osama bin Laden's ties to the country. While there are a million conspiracies as to who is responsible for the attack on the World Trade Center, it does seem a little odd that Pete would ignore their potential involvement. Does Pete Davidson know he's performing for the people who killed his dad? It turns out Pete was fully aware of the implications that came with performing in Saudi Arabia, but when he saw the potential payout, he simply didn't care.
What I've heard, dude, is at that Riyadh festival is that, there's a lot of people that say people are getting paid by this Middle Eastern money and that they can say this or they can't say that, or that they're over there, they're going to try to influence you guys in order to speak certain ways. Are you part of that conspiracy theory, or is that nothing you're on?
I've heard there's subreddits of I think all these people are in bed with that. I get the routing and then I see the number and I go, I'll go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not caring and taking the money was also the mindset of Tim Dillon. Ironically, this is also what got him removed from the festival. Tim has been very open about his fascination for gaining money and power, and he even directly admitted that he could be bought by any entity or government agency if the price was right.
Oh, Tim Dillon's in LA. He's going to sell out. Yes, correct. Correct. I am here and I have my asshole gaping wide open for a multinational corporation to mount me and me.
So when he told everyone that he was taking the Saudi money, nobody was surprised. It's exactly what they expected.
I think it's very exciting that we're all going to Riyadh, and I know that people are very upset about it. They're angry that comedians are going to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Get over it. Get over it. We're going to Riyadh. The House of Saud is paying us hundreds of thousands of dollars, some of us millions, not me, but they're paying millions of dollars to comedians. What's your problem? Well, they have slaves, then they Hey, get over it.
Now, some people believe it's messed up that Tim is showing disregard for serious human rights violations and is directly saying that his personal financial gain is more important. Then again, he is being brutally honest. Most comedy fans had already come to the conclusion that these comedians have chosen money over morals. At least Tim was willing to admit it. Ironically, him defending the Saudis is what actually got him removed from the lineup entirely.
But he called me and he said, they heard what you said about them having slaves. And I said, I was being positive about it. I was defending them. He goes, well, I know that. I know you were defending them. I said, I was defending them for having slaves. I literally said, slaves are probably hard workers and for the most part, agreeable. But they didn't like that.
The same government he was making excuses for silenced him when he stepped out of line, perfectly illustrating why so many critics accuse the festival of being hypocritical in the first place. It's almost poetic. A comedian defending a government known for suppressing free speech ends up being silenced by that same government. However, not every comedian just turned a blind eye and took the money. But real quick, I want to talk about one of the most disturbing industries in America again: data brokers. One of the biggest data brokers is Spokio, and they claim to be selling a staggering amount of our personal information. These data broker companies' entire business model is collecting your personal info and selling it to anyone willing to pay. They provide reports like this that have information about you, including your contact info, address, your relatives, and maybe even what car you drive. This stuff isn't just floating around by accident, it's being packaged, indexed, and sold legally right now. It's scary how easily this information can be found, and I'm not okay with it, and you shouldn't be either. Thankfully, the sponsor of today's video, Aura, makes it easy to fight back. Aura finds the data brokers exposing your info and automatically sends opt-out requests to get it taken down. You don't need to fill out dozens of forms because Aura handles it for you. Aura also monitors the dark web, alerts you if someone's trying to use your info for credit fraud, and comes with a VPN and password manager. If something does happen, you're covered with up to $5 million in identity theft insurance and 24/7 US-based fraud support to help you fix it fast. Try Aura free for 14 days at aura.com/PatrickCC. In those 2 weeks, Aura will get to work scrubbing your personal info off these data broker sites. I'm not leaving myself vulnerable, and you shouldn't either. Before the Riyadh Comedy Festival was even announced, Shane Gillis mentioned that he had been offered to perform in Saudi Arabia, but denied.
They're asking me to go to the Middle East soon.
What? Where? Why?
Saudi Arabia and UAE or Dubai. I think I'm gonna pass.
Yeah. For the troops? Is it for the troops?
Not for the troops. It's for the Saudis.
For the Saudi princes?
Yeah, and everyone's like, yeah, you should do it. Everyone's doing it. It's like, for Saudis? Weren't those the 9/11 guys?
Shane is arguably the biggest comedian on the planet right now, so there is no doubt that he received a substantially larger contract offer than most of the other comedians on the bill. And Shane even claimed that after his initial refusal, they doubled their offer, but he still said no.
They doubled the bag, the princes?
It was a significant bag, but I'd already said no, you know? I took a principled stand.
And Shane wasn't alone in his stance, as other comedians chimed in to give their takes. Comedian David Cross, who was not personally invited, expressed secondhand embarrassment that his colleagues would agree to take part. What do you think I think? I am disgusted and deeply disappointed in this whole gross thing. That people I admire, with unarguable talent, would condone this totalitarian fiefdom for what? A fourth house? A boat? More sneakers? Now, Cross makes a good point here. If these were broke comics faced with a life-changing opportunity and no other options, then maybe you could understand their reasons for agreeing to doing the show. But these are some of the most successful and famous comedians the world has to offer. Turning down this gig doesn't mean going without food or shelter, it just means you have to find something else to fill your schedule. Atsuko Okasuka denied and even went as far as to leak the contract she was offered. The contract specifically states that comics were not permitted in any form to make fun of Saudi Arabia, the royal family, its government, or its religious beliefs. Which is interesting because these days many comics pride themselves on being free speech absolutists and have taken strong stances against censorship to combat cancel culture. But now these same comedians who pride themselves on their principles were selling out for a big payday. For example, Whitney Cummings spoke out against those celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk, saying, "If you are happy someone was publicly executed because they don't share your beliefs, congrats, you're the Taliban." Not even 1 month later, Whitney was on stage performing for a country with a deep history of doing the exact same thing she was criticizing. Not to mention that she signed a contract agreeing to completely ignore those same behaviors. Jeff Ross, king of Comedy Central celebrity roasts, considers comedy as one of the last bastions of free speech. This statement was in response to one of his jokes being cut from a broadcast, but him performing in Riyadh makes it seem like his appreciation for free speech could be ignored if the price is right. However, the comedian who got the most backlash for his performance was Bill Burr, because in the past he was extremely vocal about criticizing other entertainers for taking Saudi money to perform for them. Bill Burr's comedic persona used to be the loud, overconfident guy at the end of the bar, the type who said whatever he wanted, no matter how offensive it was, and dared you to get mad about it. For years, that attitude made him a hero to audiences tired of political correctness, labeling him as one of the last unfiltered comedians, but over time, Burr's tone began to shift. He started challenging the same stereotypes he used to joke about, calling out toxic masculinity, police brutality, and even the hypocrisies of conservative outrage. He is now very open about his own angry, toxic view of the world and saw his own change as positive growth, and that he's simply a man evolving with the world around him. To his diehard fans, they feel betrayed or at least just uninterested in his new comedy. Put simply, they basically think Bill Burr went woke. Today, Bill Burr has actually been praised for being an excellent left-wing influencer without even trying to be one. However, taking money from a brutal regime is something that both sides of the political spectrum would criticize. Bill himself even did it. In 2011, Bill called out Beyonce, Usher, and Mariah Carey for doing a private New Year's performance for the children of Muammar Gaddafi.
Usher, Beyonce, and Mariah Carey actually did private New Year's gigs for $1 million. Did New Year's gigs for Gaddafi's kids. Can you believe that? How much money do you need to make? You know? You're gonna take a gig where you're gonna go dance like a goddamn clown for a mass murderer's kids? And then you take that blood money, stick it in your bank account, go buy yourself some glitter or whatever the hell you do when you're a goddamn singer. Buy some more streamers to hang on your mic stand, and then when you get busted, you try to play it off like you had no idea who Gaddafi is.
As poorly as this clip has aged, it gets worse. Towards the end of the podcast, Bill makes an offhanded remark about an imaginary comedy festival taking place in Saudi Arabia.
I will see some of you at the Gibson Amphitheater on April 2nd for the Kevin and Bean comedy show that raises money for I forget what cause. I know it's a great cause, because no one ever raises money for terrorists, right? I guess, unless you do a comedy show in like Saudi Arabia. Isn't that what they do? That's how they raise money with their filthy oil money, and they funnel it through the mosques. Isn't that how it goes down? Is that how the paper trail goes down?
Mariah Carey and Usher went on to apologize for their performances and either raised money for a charitable cause or donated their full payout, but Bill did not do the same. In fact, he's been one of the most vocal in terms of defending himself for his decision. He lashed out at critics on his podcast, basically saying that they were all phony and this was all fake outrage.
I performed in an arena over there. In the round, there was 8,000 people at the show, okay? It was citizens. And then they had diplomats sitting down front in a nerve-wracking way for the performer to make sure that, you know, you didn't talk about the 2 or 3 things that they said that they negotiated down to not talk about. There was women at the show, 4 hotties down front, faces were not covered, smoke shows.
Billy Two-Face after performing in Berlin 1938. Dude, there were a couple of hot Jewish girls in the front row. I love how Bill's response is essentially, you're all too stupid to actually be mad at this. Great take, Bill. I guess we all didn't realize there were hotties in the front row. Our bad. We're so stupid. In this podcast, he spends a majority of his time debunking what he calls lies, such as the notion that they only performed for foreign diplomats or that women weren't allowed to attend the event. Bill started defending Saudi Arabia and even drew parallels to America. He compared Saudi Arabia's human rights violations to the controversy surrounding the current administration's use of ICE agents to detain suspected illegal immigrants. He also felt that there was an extreme misconception at what life is like over in Saudi Arabia after visiting there. He said, if you actually care about those people and how they're living over there, there's going to have to be these types of things to pull them in. And I will tell you, the Cheesecake Factory in Riyadh, it's incredible. It's right next to a Pizza Hut and KFC. And if you want a pair of Timberlands, it's across the street next to the Marriott, catty corner to the Hilton. His critics responded with, they can't be evil. They have a Burger King. Bill performing in North Korea, dude, they had a grocery store fully stocked. Everyone was smiling. Everyone had the same haircut. Like, it was sick, dude. Very few felt that Bill was just logically defending himself. Most felt like he had gone too far and become a mouthpiece for Saudi Arabian propaganda. And when looking into what the Riyadh Comedy Festival truly is and why it even exists, this theory appears to be reasonable. The Comedy Festival is one piece of a government program called Saudi Vision 2030. Vision 2030 represents a bold state-led capitalist reform agenda for Saudi Arabia and aims to reshape the country's economy, society, and global standing. Saudi Arabia is an extremely wealthy country, mostly due to its oil production, which is responsible for 75% of the country's fiscal revenue. The problem is that relying mostly on oil makes a country like Saudi Arabia extremely vulnerable. For example, if something happened that made oil's demand drop, like an increase in electric vehicle sales, countries like Saudi Arabia wouldn't be able to recover financially. Potential market collapses like these are what Saudi Vision 2030 was created for, to ensure economic diversification before things could get out of hand. One of their goals for diversification meant entering other markets like the entertainment industry. The Quality of Life program aims to improve the quality of life in Saudi by developing cultural, entertainment, sports, tourism, and urban activities. It engages citizens, tourists, and investors, enhancing their well-being with diverse experiences. Put simply, the Riyadh Comedy Festival is a government-funded event created with the intention of boosting Saudi Arabia's public image. It is just a small part of a much bigger scheme to increase tourism to the country and gain influence across the entire world. This is a huge reason why people are so upset at the comedians who performed, as they were being directly paid by the Saudi government and being used as pawns to enhance their public image. Now, if you're like Bill Burr, you could argue that this could be an honest, good faith effort to progress into a more modern society that is fair and just for all races, ideologies, genders, and sexualities. Saudi Arabia has shown in recent years to be following a more progressive path, most notable being the changes made in favor of women's rights, which now allows women the ability to drive cars, and their head coverings are optional, and they also have more opportunities in the workforce. The Saudis have also made strides to prioritize things like accessible healthcare and affordable housing. Some people believe that Saudi Arabia embracing more Western ideals should be something we universally support, but others say it's not that simple. Nowhere in the Saudi Vision 2030 annual report does it talk about what it's done to undo its human rights violations. There is no mention of political prisoners being freed, there's no commitment to freedom of speech, and there's no promise to liberate the 740,000 people currently living as slaves in the country. It's been reported that 241 people have been executed in Saudi Arabia this year alone. While it's nice that women's rights have improved, they still exist as second-class citizens to their male counterparts. It's also no secret that allowing more women to work only stands to benefit the country financially. With more people working, that means more tax revenue for the government. What I find particularly interesting about the backlash surrounding this comedy festival is that it's the exact same thing that is happening in the world of golf. Stick with me here. What the Saudis are doing here is also referred to as sports washing, which is the use of a sport to redirect public attention away from unethical conduct. This is why the Saudis have also made major investments in esports, the UFC, the WWE, soccer, Formula One, racing, flag football, but the worst offender is by far golf. Not too long ago, golfers were being accused of taking blood money to play, and it has had massive ramifications on the sport, and the comedy industry could be starting to nosedive, just like the sports that Saudi Arabia has their hands in. The Saudi government founded a global golf league called Live Golf to compete with the PGA Tour, and what Live Golf offered to these players was such a good deal that it was incredibly difficult to refuse, starting with the massive contracts: $125 million to Dustin Johnson, $200 million to Phil Mickelson, and $300 million to Jon Rahm. Tiger Woods was allegedly offered $1 billion to move to that league, but denied. Keep in mind that the PGA Tour does not offer a contract that guarantees money like football, basketball, or baseball. These contracts offered guaranteed generational wealth. Plus, golfers would still be able to win money at individual tournaments. For example, Bryson DeChambeau accepted a $100 million offer to play for LIV and still won over $10 million in winnings in 2025 so far. Also, LIV changed the format of the game to make it easier and less stressful for the players. Instead of grinding through a 4-day-long 72-hole tournament each weekend, LIV events are only 54 holes, so players compete for just 3 days, which means less physical strain on the body and travel fatigue. Players also only have to compete in 14 events per year, roughly one every 6 weeks, compared to the PGA Tour's mandatory 20 to 25 events for players who want to maintain full status. Also, there's no cut, so every golfer gets paid every event regardless of performance, and the prize purses are massive, often double or triple what PGA offers. LIV also covers travel, lodging, and expenses related to the events, and gives players team-based bonuses. All of these things are completely unheard of in the traditional PGA Tour golf world. Put simply, golfers get shorter tournaments, fewer obligations, guaranteed paydays, and life-changing contracts, all while working half as much. For many players, the only downside was the backlash that came with accepting Saudi money. Any golfer who took the deal was met with the same criticism as the Riyadh comedians. They were seen as sellouts and greedy, that they would willingly take a massive payday and ignore all the same human rights violations that we discussed in this video. And it's not crazy to think that what happened to golf could happen to the comedy industry as well. Let me cook for a second. Now that the best golfers in the world are split into 2 leagues, both of them kind of suck. Live events have this sort of unserious party atmosphere. They play music during the event and fans are encouraged to get lit. This is the opposite of the very serious, rigid, quiet environments of the PGA Tour. Live has turned the once high-stakes, high-pressure game into a spectacle. It's more of a laid-back exhibition where everyone gets paid and nobody loses. Meanwhile, the PGA Tour has suffered too. With half of the world's top talent gone, the level of competition at the biggest tournaments just isn't the same. Say what you want about the higher-ups at the PGA, but it's undeniable that they deeply care about the sport of golf. The same, however, can't be said for Live. Do you really think that the Saudi government personally cares about growing the game of golf, aside from their own cultural and financial enrichment? But how does this impact comedy? Well, if the Saudis continue investing heavily in comedy, the same dynamic that ruined golf could start to unfold. Imagine a world where comedians are suddenly offered life-changing money to perform fewer shows in easier environments, with no need to tour constantly or sharpen their material in front of tough crowds. On paper, it sounds like a dream. Less work, more money. But just like golfers losing their edge under the relaxed conditions of Live, comedians could start to lose their sharpness too. That constant grind of clubs and bombing in front of strangers is what hones great comedy. Without that, their comedic instincts dull, their material gets lazier, and their art suffers. And because performing in Saudi Arabia means operating under government restrictions, these comedians can't even push boundaries or test taboo topics. Their comedy has to be diluted to fit within censorship laws. Over time, that combination of overpayment, less practice, and creative censorship could lead to an entire generation of comedians who are richer than ever, but far worse at what they do. But Bill Burr is by far the comedian that most comedy fans are disappointed in, but he is convinced that what he is doing is a step in the right direction. Bill's major arguments for attending was to advance freedom of speech in the country.
Once again, as I said before, whoever put together the comedy festival and everything, what it did for freedom of speech over there, because like before it started, you couldn't talk about all of this stuff, and then they whittled it down to just that. And that is how, you know, if you truly care about stuff like that, you gradually move towards something more positive.
This logic is quite similar to how other comedians would defend their actions. Aziz Ansari made an appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live where he was questioned about his involvement with the Riyadh Comedy Festival.
So people are questioning why you would go over there and take their money to perform in front of these people.
I have an aunt that lived there for a while, and I talked to her about this, and she said, you know, there's people over there that don't agree with the stuff that the government's doing, and to ascribe like the worst behavior of the government onto those people, it's not fair. Just like there's people in America that don't agree with the things the government is doing.
While Aziz's sentiment is true, it doesn't fully address the reality of the situation. Yes, the Saudi government and their actions do not reflect the innocent citizens who live there, but those citizens are not the ones signing the checks. If comedians agree to perform in spite of the Saudi government's ongoing human rights offenses, then there is no incentive for them to stop. Other comedians tried to justify their appearance under the guise of social justice, such as Jessica Curson. Being a lesbian comic with a large LGBTQ audience, it's no surprise that many fans were upset with her appearance, as Saudi Arabia is known for their harsh anti-LGBT laws. She said, "I requested a guarantee that I could be openly out as a lesbian on stage and perform gay material. I hope that this could help LGBTQ+ people in Saudi Arabia feel seen and valued. I am grateful that I was able to do precisely that. To my knowledge, I am the first openly gay comic to talk about it on stage in Saudi Arabia. I received message from attendees sharing how much it meant to them to participate in a gay-affirming event. At the same time, I deeply regret participating under the auspices of the Saudi government. Many other comedians are brushing the situation away with strategic silence. Comics like Louis C.K. and Dave Chappelle have been able to dodge criticism by saying nothing. And like many other cases, this was probably the smartest move because nothing any of these comedians have said could convince comedy fans that the Riyadh Comedy Festival is a net positive for the art form or for Saudi Arabians, which is why fans believe the least embarrassing way to handle the criticism is for these comedians to just straight up admit that they don't care and just wanted a nice payday.